takeaways from our seminar today. We want you to become very comfortable using the website. This is a tool that we have been focusing on for the last few months and the last year, our online portal. So you'll hear our team talk about that a lot. Obviously, this is the main tool you want to use when applying for a license. The next thing that we really want to focus on, and we will be focusing on, is how to avoid the common application errors and deficiencies. These are items that typically will hold up your new application process. So a major goal of this seminar is to get you well acquainted with what applicants get hung up on and try to make this application process as smooth as possible. And then the third is we are available to you. So our team is very available. Jesse's already put all of our direct contact information in the chat. So we definitely encourage you to email us, give the team a call, should you have questions as you are compiling and gathering all of the information needed to apply. Common application errors. And you'll hear my colleague Jacqueline talk about this at length later throughout the seminar, but we have identified what those top 5 errors are. So you'll see some graphics we use throughout the seminar to really emphasize and focus on those, so that if anything, when you're putting together your application, you've got these 5 things that usually hold folks up. And so those are bond, qualifying party or QP experience, identification, testing, and background checks. So as we discuss these in more detail, you'll see this top 5 symbol that helps highlight those items. So how do you submit an application? Again, the portal. 90% of our applicants are using our portal. It's accessible, it's convenient, you can access it at any time. We are all about making this process as smooth as possible. We also do remind folks, of course, we would love to see you here at the office, but we recognize some of you are not located in the Phoenix metro area where our office is located, and we want people to be able to apply from all across the state when it's most convenient for them. So after hours, on the weekends, please visit the portal and visit our website if you haven't already done so, but I'm thinking most of you have done so. We are very excited because we are just under a month of launching our updated and enhanced portal. So again, our focus has been on making the application process, and later on, once you have your license, the license maintenance process convenient for everybody. So we launched this on November 15th, and we're very proud of the fact that you can do everything via our portal. One thing to note is that if maybe you had an account on our old portal, you will need to create a new login in our new portal. It also includes a bond portal, which is a tremendous function of the portal. You can apply for a license, submit updates, eventually renew your license, and even consumers can submit a complaint. So first step is you'll want to create an account. So as a reminder, if you had an account in the old portal, you'll still need to create an account. And then if you've never created an account in our new portal, this is what you'll want to do. And we have a short video that we're going to play. Oh, excuse me, I got ahead of myself, not yet. Info required to create a portal account. So some basic information that you're going to need when you get ready to create your portal account is the authorized representative's information. So basic information includes their full name, date of birth, a valid email address. Of course, we can't stress the email address enough, so make sure that it's a good address that is checked. That is our primary method of contact. What your preferred method of contact is, of course, we still use the phone. That email is certainly where it's at. And then as is usual with other online systems is you'll need to choose some security questions. Then you'll also need the business entity's information. So what kind of business is it? The type of entity, the name of the company, the Arizona Corporation Commission file number, if you're an LLC or corporation, again, a valid email address, the physical address of the business, and a telephone number. Our online portal can be found at this website here, www.rocaz.gov. And from the home page, you will go to My Account. And then here is the demo that I was so excited to show you just a few seconds ago for the online customer portal. So this is how you will create your online portal account.
If you're logging into the ROC Online Customer Portal after November 15th, 2021, you will need to create a new account even if you previously had one. Click the Register Here button to create your account. Next, you'll need to add your name, email address, date of birth, government-issued ID number, social security number, a preferred method of communication, and a phone number. Next, you're going to need to go check your email. If you don't see the Welcome to AZ ROC email in your inbox, please check your spam folder. And look, there it is, Welcome to AZ ROC. There will be a link in the email to help you set your password. If the link is not clickable, just copy it and paste it in the search bar. Next, you're going to need to create a password. It needs to be 10 characters with at least one letter and at least one number. You'll need to enter the password twice. Now that you've made your account, you're ready to use the ROC Online Customer Portal.
All right, and then the next step after you create your portal account is connecting your business to your account. And I've got another little video.
To connect your ROC Online Customer Portal account to your business, you will need to click the Add an Entity to Your Account button at the top of the dashboard. If you are already a licensed contractor, the easiest way to add an existing ROC licensed business is by searching with your ROC license number. If you're trying to connect a business entity to your account that is not yet licensed with Arizona Registrar of Contractors, you will need to search for the business entity, either using the Arizona Corporation Commission file number, the sole proprietor's name, or the business entity's name. Please follow the instructions and fill out the required fields to help you find your business. Once the business is connected to your account, it'll show up on your dashboard under Business Entities.
All right, so now we're going to take a deeper dive into the application and how you fill that out. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Jacqueline, who will be taking over the next few slides.
Thank you, Cindy. So like Cindy was saying, we're going to look into more of the specific elements that go into a license application. The first step of that is to determine who is the applicant. So here in Arizona, we actually license that entity rather than an individual. So you'll want to determine what type of entity type you're going to be. So if you're looking at a sole proprietorship or a partnership, that entity will be made out of the names that appear on your ID. So if it's a sole proprietorship, that would be one person. who has a government issued ID. It's made into a business structure for us to license. For a partnership, you'd be looking at the partners of that partnership to determine the name that would go on that based on the government issued ID. So it does need to match that exactly, and that's one of our common deficiencies, especially for sole proprietorships. If your government issued ID that you're going to be submitting has a middle name listed on it, make sure that middle name is included in your sole proprietorship application as that entity name. For corporations and LLCs, that'll be filed with the Arizona Corporation Commission. From the Arizona Corporation Commission, you'll want to make sure you've had that already registered, that you're active and in good standing with them, and you'll determine that company name based on what you've already registered, again, with the Arizona Corporation Commission. For trusts, it would be the exact name as it appears on the trust certificate. So we do offer the ability to add a DBA to your license. And what a DBA is a doing business as name. So it allows you to have another name to advertise for your license, but it does need to be an ROC approved DBA. And what that means is you don't need to send us an email to ask if that name is going to be okay with us. Instead, you're just going to want to make sure that that DBA doesn't mislead the public. So if you are a plumbing contractor and your DBA includes the word electrical in it, that might be misleading to the public and indicating that you can do that electrical work. Obviously, if you don't have an electrical license, you wouldn't want to be advertising that type of service. So that's what that ROC approved name means for your DBA. So you just want to make sure that it's not going to mislead the public and that it also doesn't have the title of LLC or Inc. after it in your DBA, because that indicates a business structure. And like the last slide we were talking about, that is the actual entity type that you're licensing rather than a DBA, which is just that name to also be able to advertise under. So it's not its own individual structure. You can register that DBA with the Arizona Secretary of State. It is optional, but we do recommend that. You can always add, remove, or change that DBA at any time throughout your license. That's just an additional form you send in to us to advise us of that change, and some additional documents would be needed. But if you don't add one from the very beginning and later on determine you need one or you want one, that can be done at a later time. So if you determined what type of entity structure you're going to have, what that entity name is, you next need to determine the license classification that you're going to be applying for. So the first step is to ask yourself if you're going to be doing residential, commercial, or dual contracting. Dual meaning it's both residential and commercial. We break that into some subgroups here. It's general contracting. Those are typically your licenses that are larger scale, so building entirely new homes, multiple specialty trades. Specialty and subcontracting are specific to a type of trades. Those are our plumbing, HVAC, electrical, things of that nature would be a specialty license. And then we have our engineering classifications, which typically are our A classifications that relate more to public works like roads, bridges, things of that nature. Once you've determined your classification, you will need to determine who is going to be your qualifying party. So the qualifying party is the person that you're naming on your license as the person who has the experience and the knowledge for the classification you're applying for. So the qualifying party requirements for us are that they have taken the exams needed for your classification and again, have that experience. So the Statutes and Rules exam is required for everyone who has a license in Arizona. You would need to take that. That's more of our law portion, whereas we have a trade exam as well for some of the classification types, and that's going to be specific to the actual classification you're applying for. We're also going to need their experience history. So that'll include things like dates of employment, hours worked per week, the position, a description of the duties, contact information for a reference. Something to note for the reference is it can't be anybody who's already named on that application, but it can still be family members, other people who've firsthand witnessed your experience, just not anybody also named on your application. You need your name as listed on the government issued ID, their date of birth, social security number, their driver's license or other government issued ID, residential address, phone number, email, that title and position. If they have any ownership, in that percentage, along with a background check through our website. These are some of our common deficiencies. You'll want to make note of that. Make sure you have all of those included. Specifically for that background check, make sure you have completed it through our website. You can find that under licensing and contractor background checks. That is the only one that we accept. So you'll want to find that on our website before you submit your application. It is through People G2. So this is a question we get a lot. What about exam waivers? Who qualifies for them? For in-state applicants, the statutes and rules exam can only be waived if that qualifying party has been named on an Arizona license within the last 5 years. It needs to be that same qualifying party, and that license had to have been active within 5 years. And that's to waive the statutes and rules exam. If you're looking to waive the trade exam, it would need to be from somebody who's named as the qualifying party on an Arizona license classification within the last 5 years, and that's the exact same classification that they're applying for now. For out-of-state applicants, the statutes and rules exam cannot be waived since that's specific to Arizona. The trade exam could be waived if the qualifying party is named on a comparable license from out of state. We do ask that you submit verified waivers from that licensing board. This has changed a bit since the start of COVID. We are a little bit more relaxed on that. Usually it would come by a sealed envelope from that other board. But now we do ask if you're looking to waive your trade exam, we don't pre-approve that, but in your application packet, you can identify that state that you're waiving from, double check for yourself that it is the same qualifying party, that it is a comparable license type, and that has been active within the last 5 years. We would just need to know the information of what state, the license number, things of that nature that you'll see on the out-of-state waiver request form. But if you're not able to get that over to the other state, you can send that in without the bottom half completed, because we will do that research on our end. But we need that specific information from you first so we can do that research for you. And we would look into that at the point of receiving your license application. We've also had some changes to our examinations. So we have 2 different companies that administer those exams. So the first one is Ambition, and that is done for the statutes and rules exam. And that is more of a training course along with the exam. So it is a self-paced exam. You would log in for Ambition for that statutes and rules exam. And for the trade and solar, you would log in with PSI. And those trade and solar exams are available online or in person as proctored exams. A little bit more in depth here with the statutes and rules exam. Again, it is a training course and it covers contracting laws in Arizona. It is offered online only by Ambition. It's self-paced and you can save and return at your convenience. The cost is $54 and all study materials are available for free through download within that course. You can find that link for the registration on the ROC's website. It's under the Applying for a License in the Pass Examination section. It's also under the Licensing Form tab under License Classification Requirements. You can also find the PSI Candidate Information Bulletin under that licensing heading. For trade exams and solar exams, this exam covers the knowledge of a specific trade. And again, you'll want to research your classification you're going to be applying for to determine if a trade exam is needed for that classification. The trade exam is offered online or in person, so you do have the options with this one, but it's going to be through PSI. So just know you're going to have to be in 2 different sites to get that accomplished, one for the statutes and rules exam and one for that trade exam. The exams with PSI are proctored, so they're supervised and it is timed. So just make sure you've carved out that time for taking the exam. The cost is $66 for a trade and $40 for solar. The study materials are available on our website as references to what you can purchase. They are optional, and we'll go over that in a little bit more detail on the next slide. The link for the exam for PSI, again, it's just under that Applying for a License and Pass Examination section, along with that licensing form section. So those trade exam reference materials are in the PSI Candidate Information Bulletin. So you can pull that up. You can go to that link at the top of our site here. I'm sure Jesse will put that in the chat as well. You'll want to get that PSI candidate information Bulletin, which is several pages long. So you'll scroll to the bottom if you're trying to find those specific trade exams, and then it'll make it easier for you to determine the reference materials that are allowed for your specific trade exam. So if you scroll to pages 14 through 17, it'll have a bunch of blue hyperlinks like you're seeing at the bottom of the page here. And you would click on that specific classification to get more information about it. So if I was interested in that A, general engineering, commercial classification, I could click on that top blue hyperlink, and it would take me to information regarding that exam, such as the number of questions, how long I have, and those reference materials that I can purchase, again, that are optional. So additional people are required to be named on the application if you fall into these categories. So for a limited liability company, that would be anybody who owns 25% or more of the stock or beneficial interest of that company. It also includes all members of member managed LLCs and all managers of manager managed LLCs. So you'll want to look at your Arizona Corporation Commission filing to determine that if you're not sure. You can review that first, and then if you have anybody listed as members in addition to yourself, they would need to be on your application packet regardless of the percentage that they own. And then same thing for manager managed LLCs. If you have a manager listed on Arizona Corporation Commission, you'll need them on your application regardless of their ownership percentage. And then additionally, anybody who owns 25% or more will need to be on that application. For corporations, it's a little different. If you have a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, or the equivalent of these officers, they'll need to be listed on your application. So again, you can check Arizona Corporation Commission to determine who those people are if you're unsure. It would also need the owners of anybody who owns 25% or more of the corporation and all directors. So this one will be a little bit more specific. It's a tiered entity. Not everybody will need to be providing one of these. It's rather rare for our applicants. But if you are somebody who has a company that is owned by another company, this is where you would need to have a tiered entity chart. So if you're directly owned by a person and no other owners, no company owns that company that you're applying under, you won't need a tiered entity chart. But if you are somebody who's owned by, or if you're a company that's owned by another company, then you will need to provide one of these in your application packet. So the example one here is Red Corporation is our applicant. So you can see that at the bottom of the screen there. And it from there is owned by Blue LLC and Green Corp. So we would need to continue up our chain of companies until we don't have anybody who owns 25% or more of the applicant. So you would continue up giving different percentages of each company, and eventually you may hit people or you may continue up to additional companies. But by the time you've ended it, you should be able to attest no person or entity other than those listed owns 25% or more of the applicant. So you can see that at the bottom right corner with the red arrow there. That exact attestation needs to be provided on your tiered entity chart along with an authorized representative signature there. For us to be able to determine that you have provided everybody we need on this tiered entity chart. And what it helps determine is anybody who may additionally be needed to be on the application. So we would continue up that chart. If you have companies listed, they need to have their addresses listed. And as you go up, you would want to include the percentages of ownership. If you have one of these and you're unsure about it because it is specific to each company and there's no exact template for it, just this reference material for you, you can email the licensing department for additional assistance with that. You can reach out to our licensing department in general to get additional information because they are very specific to each company. And sometimes it can be a little hard to start that tiered entity chart by yourself. So you can always check with us to get additional information before you submit that application with these. Right, so requirements for people named on the application. So again, this is including those persons that we described, those directors, those members or managers, those people who own 25% or more and are qualifying party. They all need to provide specific information in their application packet. The first of which is their name as listed on their government issued ID, their date of birth, their social security number, that government issued ID, which can be a driver's license or passport, residential or business address, their phone number, email address, title or position, the percentage of ownership, and a background check, again, through our website. A moment to regroup. So we do have quite a bit of information that we've gone over. Some of the key takeaways from this is just the beginning of your application. Who is the qualifying party? That's going to be somebody regularly employed by the licensee. They're going to take those required exams, have the knowledge, skills, and experience to perform the work under the scope of license that's being applied for. The other people listed on that application, that's anyone who owns 25% or more of the beneficial interest of the applying entity. That's the members of the member-managed LLCs, managers of manager-managed LLCs, corporate officers and directors for corporations. And in most cases, if you look at your Arizona Corporation Commission file, anybody whose name there typically needs to be listed on your license application as a general statement to make it a little easier to follow. But if you have questions on that before you apply, please reach out to us. We can look at your public filing for Arizona Corporation Commission too if you're unsure about who needs to be listed on your application. And everyone needs to provide a completed section of their application, IDs that are government issued and current and legible. So those are typically what we run into to make it part of our top deficiencies, is that the government issued ID isn't current. So just make sure it hasn't expired yet and make sure that there's no shadow or anything that's covering any portion of that ID in your picture. So that way we can make sure we update your information and it doesn't become a deficiency. They'll also need a background check, again, through our website, and those are valid for 90 days from the time that you've submitted them. So just make sure you're not planning on applying like 6 months from now and getting that type of thing done because it will need to be more current. All right, disclosures. So we will need some disclosures from anybody who's applying with us, and that includes prior license information, so any revocations or current suspensions, unlicensed activity, which would be any citations or convictions, and criminal history, any felony convictions or pending charges. For any criminal history, we do need specific documentation from you. So that would be these required documents here on the left-hand side. It's the indictment or complaint, court's findings or plea agreement, pre-sentence report, documentation of the sentence, completion of the sentence, satisfaction of restitution if applicable, and order restoring civil rights if applicable. For the optional documents, you could submit a letter of explanation describing what happened and any steps taken to avoid a repeat, letters of reference, completion of addiction recovery or other relevant program, personal, professional, or educational achievements after the conviction. Something important to note with this too is if you have had a criminal history, that doesn't necessarily bar you from licensure. That's definitely not the case. It just does require a little bit of additional review by our legal team with this documentation. So definitely don't take that as it would be denied by any means. It would have to go through our legal review. If you're missing any of this documentation, we would have to issue a deficiency letter describing what we would need, and that does hold up the application process a bit. So if you have anything that you need to submit with your application, review this slide, check those required documents, get it into us the first time, so that way it doesn't hold up your license application. All right, you'll submit the application and additional documentation and fees. So we've kind of covered what goes into that specific application packet. The next step is determining your bond. We do have 3 different types of bonds. There's the surety bond, which is our most common bond. We have a cash bond and a signed certificate of deposit. And so the types are largely different. The surety bond is something you would obtain from—
I think I'm supposed to give you a call to get some appointments.
I think that was a mistake there. Thank you. For the bonds, the surety bond is issued through an insurance company. That, again, is one of our more common ones. But that does allow you to not have to upfront that money for your bond amount. It's more like almost like car insurance where you pay a premium and they upfront the coverage through a surety bond issued to us. And you continue to make payments into that. Whereas the cash bond would be submitting cash to have on file for your bond, and the assigned certificate of deposit is depositing with a bank and keeping that on file with us. So both the cash bond and the certificate of deposit are money that's more upfront, and the surety bond is something you would get with an insurance company first. For the coverage amounts, there are minimums required by the type of coverage. So the estimated volume of work to be performed in Arizona and the license classification that you're looking to apply for are both factors that will determine what type of bond amount you need. So completing the surety bond form, again, since this is our most common bond type, we like to go through this with you just to get an idea of what needs to be completed. So for a surety bond, if you have that physical paper from your insurance company, what we'll be looking for is that bond number, which is up top in the red there. That is issued through your bond company. It would need the full legal name of the applicant, followed by a DBA if you've chosen to have one. The license classification and description, so that code and the type, so CR7 carpentry is our example. The penal sums, which is the coverage amount for the appropriate classification. So because we've chosen a dual classification of CR7, we need that penal sum to be broken into commercial and residential components to determine how much is available for each. The effective date and assigned date there. So that does need to be within the last 6 months and not a future date. The signature and title of the person authorized to sign on behalf of the principal, so your authorized representative. It does also need to be notarized by an attorney in fact along with their signature. Again, that's through your bond company. And we will also need the official seal of the surety company. So you can always check this over before submitting your application. Ensure really the principal name listed at the top where it's following that bat line where we have full entity name. Make sure that that includes exactly what your company name is. So again, for sole proprietorships, make sure that's exactly your government issued ID. One of the more common deficiencies with their bonds are for sole proprietorships that forget to put their middle name for coverage. So just make sure you have that exactly represented there and that you have the classification listed as well. Those are kind of two of the main things we see. So calculating that bond coverage, again, we were talking about that classification and the annual estimated volume, determining how much you'll need for your bond. So if we were looking at a dual bond, like our CR7, we'll be looking at that residential specialty contractor section there and the commercial specialty, because those are the two that make up that CR7. So if we are going to be making less than $375,000, for our residential specialty component, you would follow that alongside the estimated annual volume there to get your bond amount of that $4,250. We would then need to add that with our commercial specialty, and we would again look at our estimated annual volume. If we were thinking we're going to make $150,000 or less, we'd be looking at $2,500 for the penal sum of the commercial amount. So that gives us a total of $6,750 of coverage, but we would break them up into those penal sums of both residential and then commercial on our bond. And one common question we get with that too, just going back to that bond coverage, is that if they don't know how much they're going to make that first year, you're just starting out, you're not entirely sure, that's okay. If you have an estimate of what you're going to make, you can start out with that. Maybe that's that $4,250 and $2,500 amounts like our CR7 example here. If later on you're having a really great year, you're making a lot more, that's wonderful. We're happy to hear it. You can always just send us a bond writer to increase that amount to go along with that estimated annual volume. So that can be issued through your bond company. So just know if you predict that you're going to have a less profitable year than you're actually having and you end up falling into those other amounts, then you can always send that bond writer to increase it. All right, so workers' compensation. For your application, you must provide proof of compliance with workers' compensation laws by submitting one of the following. That's either the policy number and issuing company or proof of self-insurance. So you can look at our information in the application packet. It will go over putting in a policy number and that insurance company name. That's what we'll need from you if you have workers' compensation. If for any reason you're exempt from workers' compensation, then you would also have that opportunity to provide that on your application. But there are specific criteria to having an exemption from workers' compensation, the largest of which is having no employees. So that includes your qualifying party, Just make sure that you're following within that criteria, review that information. We do have that link here on the page if you're unsure of if you need workers' compensation or not. All right, additional documentation that we'll ask for, solar warranty if you're applying for a solar classification. We also have the opportunity to submit a license cancellation form if you'd like to. So if you already have a license here in Arizona, maybe you have a smaller classification and you're looking to get into like a dual classification or a larger one that's already encompassing what you already held, you may want to submit a license cancellation form that is free of charge. You can include that in your application, and there's even a box there that you can check to have it canceled upon the issuance of your new license so that you can easily transition over. If you do submit a license cancellation form, just know that it does need to be signed by an authorized representative from the other company, and that cancellation cannot be undone. So it is a permanent cancellation. So just make sure if you're sending that in with your application, that is entirely what you want to do, that you would like to cancel that prior license that's described on that form. If you're unsure if you're ready to commit to a cancellation that's permanent, we also have a license inactivation form, and that essentially puts your license on pause. You're unable to contract with that license during that inactivation period, but it is something that you can reactivate in the future. Some important things to note with an inactivation is it does have a $50 fee, and you can only inactivate that license up to 2 times in the lifetime of your license. If you are a qualifying party on another license, if you're looking to disassociate from that license, you could submit a notice of disassociation or resignation, and that effectively removes you from the other license. We typically see this when somebody is moving from a separate company into their own. We also have a statute, 321127, that we often refer to since we do see it happen often enough that we're familiar with it. The qualifying party can only be listed on a maximum of 2 entities at the same time if they hold a common 25% ownership between the 2. So make sure that you are being a qualifying party on just a maximum of 2 if you have that common ownership. If you don't, it's an entirely separate company. You are just a qualifying party employee and you're looking to go to this new company, you may be looking to do a notice of disassociation to effectively remove yourself from the old and become a qualifying party on the new.
Hey, Jacqueline, before I click to the next slide, did we want to address some of the questions that I've seen come through the chat?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good time to do it. Cindy, I've got notes on a bunch.
Okay.
All right, so one of the questions was regarding if you're a contractor and you want to hire landscapers, do they have to be licensed? Yes, they do. It is in 321154 A9A. If you're a contractor, anyone that you hire to sub out work has to be duly licensed. A homeowner can hire a regular landscaper just doing mowing, etc. They may not need to be licensed, but if you're hiring a landscaper to put in sprinklers and ROC and all of that, they do have to be licensed, or as the question asked, W-2 employee, yes. So either of those. And then Jesse has put in the extra information on workers' comp. I would advise anybody with questions on that to look at that information. But typically, if you are a corp or an LLC, and you are a 1-person 100% owner, or you're a 2-member 50-50 owner, then you can apply for the exemption. But other than that, you would have to have a workers' compensation policy. And then the multi-unit housing question, which license covers multi-unit housing, residential or commercial? If it's multiple, and you want commercial residential, it would need to be a KB if you're doing ground up work. Jacqueline, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on any of those, but those are the ones I had.
Yeah, I think those are the only ones I had seen in the chat, and I think you covered those well.
Jesse, I don't know if you saw any others that I missed.
I did, and I know that you mentioned that you replied privately to
Yes.
us as well.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions at this moment while we're breaking? Anything related that we're talking to? Okay, keep going.
All right, then, so moving into application fees. If you have any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be taking another brief break for questions in a moment, so send them over if you have them. For application fees, we do have those listed on our website, and they are specific to the classification you're looking to apply for. So as you can see here, it gives that breakdown of application fee, license fee, recovery fund assessment, and the total. So that would be the 3 prior columns combined. You'll notice the recovery fund is only for residential classifications. So if you're looking at a general commercial or specialty commercial, that would not have any recovery fund assessment associated with it. If you're looking at a dual, since that does include residential work, you will be looking at a recovery fund assessment. Specifically, in our examples for the CR7, we're a specialty dual there at the bottom. And so you can see we have the application fee of $100, a license fee of $380, and that recovery fund assessment of $370. So upon submitting my application, I'd want to include a total of $850 along with that application. All right, and just a reminder, don't forget the most common application deficiencies. We've been highlighting them along the way, but that bond, make sure you've spoken to your bond company. If you're getting a surety bond, get that information up to date, especially for sole proprietorships or any companies with a DBA. Make sure that principal name does match. For qualifying party experience, make sure you're giving us details in regards to that if we're being asked of it. What we typically like to see is specific trades you've performed hands-on or you've supervised, and give us details in regards to that specific trade if asked for it. The ID, make sure that's included for everybody who's listed on your application, so those qualifying parties and other personnel. Testing, make sure you have that completed before submitting your application. We will not be able to accept it if you haven't included your testing information. So make sure you've scheduled that and completed and passed it for your qualifying party. And background checks. Make sure those have been submitted through our website within the 90-day time frame of submitting your application to us. And that should be included for everybody who's in your application packet for new companies and new applications. All right, I think that's my final slide here. I can go ahead and hand that back over to Cindy.
Thanks, Jacqueline. So just a few things. We just ask that you check your email. We will be sending a survey to you to give us a little feedback on if you found this seminar useful. We hope you did. We'll also be including a link to today's presentation, as well as a copy of the slides so that you'll have all of this handy, as well as all of our contact information. So again, Jesse did share that in the chat, but we'll be sending you a copy of all of our emails and phone numbers should you have some questions as you are gathering and compiling your information. Same with some links to that online portal demo that we shared during the seminar. And then what we also ask is that when you submit your application, there will be a box that asks whether or not you attended this applicant seminar. We ask that you check mark that. We want to see how many folks are attending this seminar and then applying for a license. So at this point, we're going to open it up for some final questions. I did see that